WDCEP has been involved with DC Startup Week for about 4 years, since the beginning of Startup Week. And I'd like to just add that it's wonderful to see how it's grown over the years. Just chatting with Rachel, that first year that we hosted in our space, we were excited about 35 people in this space, and now it's grown tremendously over the past 4 years. So congratulations to Rachel and her team. There are many exciting panels happening here today, centered around the theme of empowering startups and uniting communities. I'd like to thank my team, the WDCEP team, as well as Rachel and the rest of the DC Startup Week team for developing an insightful program for today. We hope that you're able to stay, enjoy the programming, and more importantly, network. I'd also like to take the time to thank Mayor Muriel Bowser. Under her guidance, Muriel Bowser, the district is positioned to continue its prominence as a leading global city of the capital and inclusive innovation. We could not continue to do this work without her support. I'd also like to recognize our key partners at the WDC House, the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, and John Valchicchio, Interim Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. John and his team, including Karima Woods, Director of Business Development and Strategy, have been a huge supporters of the partnership, as well as the development in DC's technological sector. At this time, I'd like to welcome John Valchicchio.
Bring this down a little bit. Good morning, everyone. Well, I just wanted to say welcome on behalf of Mayor Bowser. My name is John Valchicchio. I'm Mayor Bowser's Chief of Staff, and this summer I took on a small project of serving as the deputy or interim deputy mayor for planning and economic development. And I'm happy to be with you today. I do want to actually just ask us to pause for a moment. It is 9/11, and I did want to just ask if we could just have a moment of silence in remembrance. Thank you. So I did want to mention that Keith is a great partner of ours. We have traveled around the country and around the world promoting DC and all that it has to offer. And what we're doing today is celebrating what we have to offer in the space of innovation and startups. When we talk about this, we talk about it not as necessarily what the government has done to incubate the ecosystem, but what everybody in this room has done together. When it comes to the government and the ideas of what we can do to support you, we have a great team led by Karima with the help of Joy and Jasmine. A lot of them are in, obviously, DC t-shirts. So if you haven't had a chance to meet them, make sure you introduce yourself to them and to talk about some of our great programs. When I talk about sort of that thriving tech scene in DC, you all probably have this down chapter and verse, but we're the #1 in the world for entrepreneurial talent. DC is also the #1 creative business per capita, and we're also the #1 for women in tech for the 5th year in a row. And that's in no small part due to the 12 incubators and accelerators that we have. And one of the things that Mayor Bowser has always challenged us to do is think about how we become the inclusive innovation capital. So we want more women in tech, we want more people of color in tech, and we want to figure out the way that we can make sure that the government is actually not just kind of clearing some of the hurdles and also promoting the work that you do, but also we should be a customer of yours. So when we think about tech, we should think about companies like Go Together, which help provide safe passage to students. That's a company that's founded by someone who is a person of color, a woman of color, and we need to do more to say, how does government utilize all of the great innovations that this community is coming up with? So we've done some concrete steps, though, to make sure that we are supportive of the community. We've invested in Beacon Foundation to support women entrepreneurs. We created the country's first inclusive innovation incubator, which is on Georgia Avenue, adjacent or part of the Howard University campus. We've established a fund to support underrepresented entrepreneurs, and we launched the Aspire for Entrepreneurship for justice-involved individuals to get a second chance at life and creating a pathway to the middle class of their own. So that's why we're here. We can work with the folks in this room to create programs that you think would be helpful. We could help you when you think about the hurdles that are impediments to starting and growing a business in DC. And then we can also, hopefully, at some point, be a customer for some of the groups and organizations in this room. So with that, I want to bring up the person who has actually brought us all together. Rachel told me that this is her third year doing this and has talked about the tremendous growth of this event and events throughout the year. This is my first one, but it won't be my last. And so I asked Rachel to come on up and tell us more about the work.
Good morning, everyone. Come on. Day 3 of DC Startup Week. Come on, guys. Good morning. Thank you, thank you. Well, first off, I want to say a special thank you to the Washington Department of Economic Partnership for bringing us all here together today to have one full day of programming at Eaton, DC. If we could please give a round of applause to say thank you to their amazing team for doing this today. I want to call out a couple people who made this week possible. First, you'll see Cheetah on our team, and you'll raise your hand. Corey behind, the photographer behind all the social media. Devin, Kevin, Crystal, Lee, Keith. If you could please give another round of applause for everyone who's worked so hard over the last couple of months. So DC Startup Week, we're going into year 4 of building out programming. We've been so excited to see how we've grown from the first year of being so excited to have a couple hundred people attending, to getting it to 1,000, 2,000, to this year being able to grow our community and seeing our community grown to over 8,000 people interested to get involved with DC Startup Week and be a part of the ecosystem here in DC. So we wanted to say thank you for you guys being here today and building this strong, amazing community where we support each other, we unite, and we empower the startups and founders in DC. So a special thank you to everyone here today. Now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our keynote speaker, Donna Khalif. If I could have you come up on stage with me. And if we could please give her a round of applause to welcome her. Donna is the founder of Surprise Ride, a company that develops and delivers activity kits to homes around the country to give kids a break from technology. The company has brought 50-plus products to market and was recently acquired by Fat Brain Toys. Donna and her sister Rosie drew upon their childhoods to find Surprise Ride. The two are war refugees from Lebanon and moved to the U.S. after winning the green card lottery. Facing tremendous economic hardships as kids, they occupied themselves by doing creative projects with their artist dad. Donna has appeared on ABC's hit show Shark Tank, The View, QVC, The New York Times, Forbes, People Magazine, Entrepreneur, CNBC, and among much others. Prior to Surprise Ride, Donna's career spanned both the business and creative worlds. After leaving a career in Wall Street in JP Morgan's Mergers and Acquisitions Group, Donna completed her MBA at Harvard and bought a one-way ticket to Hollywood, where she studied and pursued her passion for acting. Donna is the author of the best book on investment banking careers and a top 40 under 40 CEO. Please join me in welcoming Donna Khalif, WDC House keynote speaker, an example of the best that DC can be as we work to build the capital of inclusive innovation.
Wow, I think that, with that bio, there goes all the punchlines, but I'm going to take you through some of the thought process behind how all of that came to be. And first, I just want to say good morning, and it is such a pleasure and an honor to be here today in front of all of you. And I thank you to Keith and the mayor and the entire WDC team, whom I've had the pleasure of working with over the last few weeks, and for having me here. And it's funny because I remember sitting in your seat about 7 years ago when we started our company, Surprise Ride, We weren't sure yet if we were going to start it, and I came to just dabble. And it really was because of events like these and the people sitting right next to you now that we ended up launching, that we felt like we could do it. So I hope that you do walk away empowered today, making some new connections, and hopefully inspired by some of the speakers that you're going to get to see. Today I want to talk to you about the rebel that lives inside of you. So you're here on a random Wednesday morning. You're either skipping work, whether you work for yourself or work for someone else. You're skipping school, or you're not working, or you're not in school, in which case, in all of those cases, there is a rebel inside of you already. So this message should go down really smoothly, should be really easy for all of you. Personally, I've had a rebellious side for as long as I can remember. And I remember one day walking out of a college class at Boston University and joining a small group of people on the sidewalk who were protesting at the time the Iraq War. And I was walking to my dorm, and as I got to the building, I just didn't have it in me to walk in. I just slowly was hugging my economics textbook and felt my voice getting louder and louder. What do you want? Peace. When do you want it? Now. And just really kind of feeling the power of protest. And at some point, somebody handed me the megaphone, and then about an hour or so later, I got a phone call. And at the time, when your phone rang, you actually picked it up. And it was my parents. And I picked up the phone, and my dad said, "I know where you are." And I couldn't really hear him. I said, "What?" He said, "I know where you are. I see you on TV, and I need you to get out of there right now." And it hadn't occurred to me that as we were marching and as we were walking, other students from all over Boston had joined in. And at that point, I was leading 25,000 people in this protest. And it was my first kind of flavor into the power of following your own heart and bringing people together in what I dubbed a rebellion. And it was really magical. I felt so excited and kind of high on life. And I remember talking to my mom later, and she confessed to me that she did the same thing when she was in Egypt in the 70s. As a woman, she would protest for women's rights in Egypt. And my parents eloped, by the way. They ran away and got married against the approval of their parents. So you could say that rebellion kind of runs in the family. And I have a 3-year-old now, and my wife is here. And I can see that she has inherited the rebellious streak, so we're going to have a really fun time bringing her up and raising her. Wish us luck. I've been living in D.C. for the past 6 or 7 years, but my story began far from here. I was born in Dubai, originally from Lebanon, and when I was 6 years old, there was a civil war in Lebanon. And I remember we used to sleep on the ground behind furniture to really try to be in the safest place in the house. And schools were shut down, and my parents worried that this civil war was going to last for months or maybe years, and that their kids would grow up without an education. So they cashed out all their savings, and they got us a ticket to go on a boat in the middle of the night and flee the country. And it was one of my earliest childhood memories, because in our haste to leave, I remember wearing my brother's Superman shirt with the big S emblem on the chest. And it turns out that it was a glow-in-the-dark shirt. And when you're fleeing war, there are no lights on the boat. You can't even light up a cigarette because you don't want enemy ships to see you. And then, psh. So I remember having this target on my chest, this glow-in-the-dark S, and hugging my mom and just feeling like, you know, am I going to be the one that they're going to target? And it's funny because in those moments, you're just a kid and you're just, you know, going through the motions. And it's not until later that you realize, you know, the stress that your parents and that your family was under. So from that day on, we moved around a lot. We went to Cyprus, that's where the boat went, and then we lived in 5 different countries. And but by the time I was 12, and my childhood felt very normal. I felt very blessed. And later I realized that it, probably wasn't the norm for 6 people to live in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment. Or I remember the time that we got groceries and from foods that I'd never tasted, and my mom told me it was because they went to a special grocery store where they picked the food for you, and I thought that's so cool. And then later realized that they'd gone to a food bank, and that's why there were foods that we never would have bought. And at 13, that same mom who told me that white lie about groceries handed me a bunch of forms and wanted me to fill them out for a lottery that her friend had been applying to every year for a decade. And being kind of the brainy child, I filled out these forms, and my mom won that first year that we applied, and it was the green card lottery. It's a real thing. We got the manila envelope, and I remember thinking this must be a scam, but it was a real thing. And if you could just imagine, the government issues 3,500 green cards per country that's eligible every year. My mom applied from Egypt, where she's a citizen, of 100 million people in Egypt, and they only issue 3,500 a year, and my mom won that first year. So she's a very lucky woman, and since we were all underage, we were able to get the green card through my mom, and that is how I am standing here today as an American citizen. From refugee to American citizens, not so different from some of the people that you hear about in the news these days, and feel very lucky to be here. I worked really hard in high school, and when I was applying to colleges, I got a glimpse for what I call grown-up rebellion, where my parents thought it was a little nuts to be applying to colleges that I couldn't afford. And I applied anyway, and I ended up getting a full ride to Boston University. And brought the entire family to tears, and it was a very special moment, but it was my first kind of positive reinforcement that maybe being a little rebellious is not always such a bad thing. And I ended up going to BU, where I fell in love with business. First, I studied engineering and was falling asleep in the classes, and then fell in love with business. And then after that, I graduated and I went and worked on Wall Street. And I learned about how companies are bought and sold. How do you value a company? When you go to buy something at the store now, the price is right on there. But when you're buying a company, a lot goes into coming up with the right valuation. And it was a skill that came in handy later when we started our company and we were thinking about someday exiting. After Wall Street, I did that for a few years, and then I went back to Boston and I did my MBA at Harvard. And if you had told my 10-year-old self that I would someday be walking through the hallways of Harvard, I don't think I would have believed you. It was very surreal for me to be there. And as it turns out, grad school was both a magical time and also a difficult time. My mom got diagnosed with cancer right before I left. And I was able to, I would sneak off in between classes and go to cancer treatments at Dana-Farber with her. And I felt so lucky that I happened to be in the same city where my mom was getting treated. And she's much better now, thankfully. But it was really an important time to realize that life is full of surprises, and no matter how hard you plan and you feel like you arrive, sometimes it throws you curveballs. And it was a really important lesson to learn that also came in handy later, because I think we often feel really disoriented when life throws those curveballs at you, but when you realize that it's just a matter of when they will happen, not if they will happen, you are much more prepared to meet them. So after Harvard, I applied to a bunch of jobs in Silicon Valley and New York. I wanted to work in entrepreneurship. And at that point, I did a lot of soul searching. And I walked into the career office and I rejected all those job offers. And I decided that, the natural thing, like anybody might decide, I decided I wanted to buy a one-way ticket and go to Hollywood. So that's what I did. And I walked into the career office, and the head of the office said to me, in all our years at Harvard Business School, nobody has rejected these job offers to go do acting. And I thought, well, I guess I'm a little different. But it was the only time in my life that I knew I could follow this childhood dream of mine, and I needed to listen to that voice, and I did it. And it was one of the best times in my life. I reconnected with my creativity. I just reconnected with my soul, and it was there where me and my sister got the idea for Surprise Ride, through that reconnection with my creativity. And I moved to DC at that point, and she joined me here. And when we were launching Surprise Ride, we didn't get a lot of support from family initially. A lot of investors told us that we should launch a kid app instead, and a lot of those kid apps don't exist anymore. But our idea was simple. We thought we wanted to give kids a break from technology, and we saw that parents were scrambling to do this. And when we were growing up, we didn't have a lot of toys, but we did a lot of activities at home with my dad, who's an artist. And so we thought, what if we could package those activities and deliver them on a monthly basis to kids everywhere? It was a good thing we didn't listen to anyone, and I'm sure you're getting that message now that what matters is what you want to do, and what we wanted to do was we wanted to start a company. So we launched Surprise Ride, and about a few weeks later, we started getting some orders. And then 4 months later, we went on Shark Tank, and it's just been an amazing ride since. We went on to sell millions in sales. We've impacted the lives of thousands and thousands of kids. Last year, I got a chance to go on The View and in front of a live audience, which was really special. And I was standing backstage talking to Whoopi Goldberg, and all I could think of was that little girl who kept watching Sister Act over and over and over again. And here I was standing with Whoopi and talking to her about her life and where she likes to put her phone when she goes to bed. And again, if you had told that kid that I would someday be there, I don't think I would have believed you. I think once you realize that every good thing in your life often comes with some resistance, you really feel free. Free to listen to your heart, free to pursue your passions, free to be who you are. And I think that's what I love about the WDC initiative, is that it is here to empower and make everyone feel free to engage and to participate and to innovate. And we need diversity in innovation. We need women, we need people of color, LGBTQ, disabled, immigrant, refugee. We need young and old. We need everyone to innovate, because that is how we are going to build companies and products for everyone. And that's how we're going to make the world a better place for everyone. So I really, love that about this initiative, and feel very honored to be a part of it. And I want you to walk away today feeling inspired to listen to the voice inside of you. So if there's anything that, as you've been listening, you feel compelled to do, that's kind of been gnawing at you, that's been calling you, I hope you take today as your sign that you should do it, that you should go for it. And if there's any way that I can help you reach that dream or make that dream happen, I want to hear from you. Please email me. It's very easy, donnacaliff@gmail.com. You can reach me on LinkedIn. And let's make it happen together and talk to the people here today and let them help you. And I want to leave you with one last thought. I have a very simple formula for life that I like to live by. And it goes something like this. If you don't buy a lottery ticket, you have a 100% chance of losing. And if you do buy a lottery ticket, you have an above 0% chance of winning. I like those odds a lot better. And that's how I've approached applying to colleges, starting Surprise Ride, trying to get on Shark Tank, my Hollywood experience, all of it. Those were just tickets that I was buying that maybe I would have a chance to win. And so I hope you walk out of here today and you have fun playing the game of life and you get yourself some tickets. And thank you so much for being here.
Graham. I'm the market editor for Technically DC. I am leading my news organization's coverage here on the tech, startup, and entrepreneurial scene. Thank you, Rachel, for inviting me to moderate this discussion today with Donna, who I've covered before but I've never met. So I'm happy to be here with you. Yeah, one of my first articles on Surprise Ride was the acquisition. So I'm happy to hear updates. So I have a few questions to lead this fireside chat. But if we have some time at the end of the discussion, we can take some questions from the crowd. So let's get started. Are there any lighthearted moments from your early days working in a small room in a nonprofit that bring a smile to your face when you recall them today?
Oh gosh, when we started the company, it was me and my sister out of our apartment, and I'm sure my wife has a lot of fond memories about that too. And then when we started growing the team, we rented a small room in a nonprofit. And as the team grew, there was less and less space, and as the boxes piled up, and you're reminding me of a time when there was literally a mouse in that little room that was like going under all of our feet. And I have had this moment of like, as the CEO and as the founder, felt embarrassed, like, oh my gosh, what kind of a work environment am I building a company in? Of course, everyone at the nonprofit didn't care that there were mice running around, like they were just totally fine with it. And I had to do something about it, and I'm pretty good at catching things, so I actually set up a trap, turned a bin around, set up a trap, waited for the mouse to come around, put the bin on it, got something under it, and walked out of the building carrying a jumping, leaping, like this thing was like, get me out of here. And I remember walking out of the building and everyone on DC kind of looking at me like, what is in that bin? Like, what is in there? And I let it out on the alley, and then someone later told me, oh, well, the mouse will just come back in. You let it out on the alley right behind I was like, oh, okay. Good to know. But yeah, a lot of funny moments from when we started in that small office.
Well, I'm glad you've upgraded from hanging out with mice. So after hearing your story, of course, things weren't always easy for you as you journeyed on the entrepreneurial path. But were people generally encouraging you to take the risk and move forward with these big ideas, or were they were your experiences different, kind of getting into this realm of work?
For me, I think growing up as an immigrant, my family definitely had a lot of pushback with entrepreneurship. You know, the one kid that goes to Harvard decides not to do anything with that degree, decides to go do acting and then start a company and not make any money. It was hard for them at first. So I really had to listen to my intuition, and I think it doesn't matter if you grew up as an immigrant or whatever, there will always be somebody in your life. It could be a really close friend who means well, it could be a parent, it could be yourself. I mean, honestly, half the time, it's us stopping us from pursuing things, and it all comes from fear. Fear that you're gonna fail, fear that you're gonna be kind of, out on the streets. But I think what I've learned is that rarely happens. Not that failure doesn't happen, but you usually figure it out. You figure out how to get back up and figure out the next thing. So it was not celebrated for me. Yeah, I had to really kind of follow my gut.
So how did you gain the courage to make these big decisions, especially moving?
Oh, yeah.
And especially after Harvard?
Well, I had a really weird experience, actually. I asked for a sign. I had a conversation with my parents where my mom said, what are you doing? You're starting, what does that even mean? And you moved to DC, and she was just kind of giving me a little bit of a hard time, and now she's one of our biggest fans. But I was walking in DuPont, and I was like, dear universe, please send me a sign if I'm on the right track. I really feel like we need to start this thing. And I kid you not, and I was very specific on what I wanted the sign to be. I won't take you through the details, but I literally got like major bird poop. And I know that sounds weird, but I got like the heavens like split open, and it was like, I was like, whoa, everywhere, like all over me. It was disgusting, and people were like, is she okay? Are you okay? And I just was laughing hysterically, like, okay.
I hear you.
So you can, you can ask for signs, you can receive them however they speak to your heart. That one worked for me. But it really, I think, was an example of how I try to stay connected to something kind of beyond this earthly life where we can really get caught up in the what we can and cannot do. And that was really the thing that kind of made me go, well, hey, let's do this.
Well, I'm glad. Well, not glad you got
Yeah.
bird pooped
I
on.
went home and showered, yeah.
Yeah, so let's shift gears a little bit. You worked very hard, and at one point you had a business coach, and you guys focused on talking about burnouts and kind of keeping that energy to still go and also knowing when to pull back. Can you talk about some of the lessons you learned?
Yeah, so for anyone here who's already has a startup going, I definitely recommend getting a business coach if you don't already have one. I remember being at a Harvard conference and learning that that's what people who were raising Series A and B, they had business coaches, and thinking, wow, okay, I hadn't really thought of that. And it's expensive. It's not always the cheapest thing, but it's really a good, for us, it was the best way to, worth every penny. At one point, our business coach said to us, you guys are so burnt out, you can't think straight, you need to take 2 weeks off. And I remember having a lot of kind of pushback on that, like, no, we can't, I have meetings, we have to figure out what to do with the company, this isn't the right time. And he sort of was like, what if I told you something really bad happened to a close friend or family? What if I told you someone passed away? Would you still show up tomorrow? And I was like, oh, what? And he's like, what if I told you someone really close passed away? And I remember thinking, of course not. Of course I wouldn't show up tomorrow, and I wouldn't worry about what to do next and how we're going to grow and how we're going to raise our next round. And he said, well, that's what I need you to do. And I felt like the cop who's kind of like, you give me your badge, like you need to go home. That's kind of how I felt, like, give me your badge. And we took 2 weeks off, and a couple days later I called him and I was like, I really don't know what to do with myself. Like, all I can think of is solving these problems. And he's like, what is it like to sit and not know what to do? What is it like to just go for a walk? And so burnout happens, and what I learned from that is we literally had not taken vacation for years. Very important to take breaks, and it's in those moments that you literally have, the best ideas and the most groundbreaking things for your company.
So after learning these lessons about burnout, did you get more comfortable taking time off or just knowing how to separate your personal time and your work time? And how did that shape moving your business forward? And do you think it was pivotal?
I did. It was a really good lesson. It was very uncomfortable. But what I learned is I would start to take even time off in the middle of the day. Some days I would wake up and just not feel as motivated. And instead of fighting through that and showing up to work anyway and kind of forcing myself to plow through it, which is how I dealt with it before, I would take it a little easy that morning. Maybe go get a coffee or plan out a day differently, find those pauses in my day. And a couple times I would literally go watch a movie at noon. Like, I would do stuff like that were unheard of in the past. And it really helped me. Those moments, I would come back into the office, actually wanting to be there, actually showing up for the team and the company. So yeah, I think it definitely helped a lot.
Awesome. So meditation and being present both play a big part in who you are and how you run your business. Can you share more about allowing yourself to be a regular human being while you're also an executive of a successful company? You already just touched a little bit on that.
Yeah. Well, a couple things I learned. One is, we live in a world where you can't really separate work and life anymore. It used to be kind of leave your personal life at home. And what we learned with our employees, we would do these one-on-ones and ask, what's one thing that we could help you solve this week that would make your life better? And we really encouraged them to not just give us work answers, but we found out at one point that somebody was getting kicked out of their apartment and was looking for a place to stay. And can you imagine if an employee shows up to work with this stress on their mind of, I don't know where I'm going to sleep next week, what that does to their productivity? So we all rallied as a team and, let's ask around, let's figure out where you can sleep. A bunch of people offered couches. And it was, so as a manager, that was a big lesson for me, learning how to invite employees to share those parts of their life, while maintaining some balance. And for me and for the team, meditation became a part of that. So we would lead our team meetings every week with a 10-minute meditation. It was optional, of course, for anybody who didn't want to join, and everybody did, but we would, and sometimes different people would lead it or would bring in a recording. And it was just such a great way to kind of settle into the meeting and have this bigger kind of life picture. So instead of diving right into how the marketing campaign's going or what's going well, what's going badly, let's just kind of have a moment, remember that we're here as human beings trying to send and deliver and develop these amazing products for families. And the best ideas would come out of those meetings because we were all a bit more grounded, than before. So meditation became something that a bunch of the team members also kind of became part of their lives.
Awesome. So touching on those one-on-one meetings, they run for about 15 minutes each, right?
Yep.
How often do those meetings happen with your employees?
We did one-on-one meetings with every employee every week. And even as the team grew, we never stopped doing them directly. So even though there'd be somebody managing somebody else, we'd still bring in the most junior people. Mostly it was me and my co-founder sitting in, and every once in a while we'd have to kind of, but Mondays were dedicated to the whole team coming together and then these one-on-ones so that everybody was kicking off the week kind of with their best self and knowing exactly what needed to be done.
Yeah, with being a part of a growing company and needing to know what goes on with your employees, how did this shape or impact how your communication worked with your employees outside of those 15-minute conversations? Did you see their productivity changing?
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I mean, before we did the weekly one-on-one meetings, everyone was kind of running wild. And you can do a lot in those early stages as a company with everyone running wild. You hire good people, they kind of know what needs to get done. Any progress is progress. And then after we raised money and we had to kind of get a bit more formulaic around where we wanted growth to go, it was really important to have that structure. So I have learned that sometimes what gets you to a certain stage in your startup doesn't necessarily work later, and it's really important to kind of keep reevaluating. And that's a place also where a business coach or a really good mentor can help you identify when it's time to shift the structure of those meetings.
Yeah. Going back to talking about how our professional and personal lives kind of mix in one, I can definitely feel that journalism never sleeps. The news never stops. Yeah. So how do you, what are some tips you have for decompartmentalizing your different types of roles and when it is time to put on your boss hat and take that hat off when you're at work?
You probably would say that I don't take the boss hat often, take it off often, but I think that for me, coming from a banking background where I was working around the clock and really felt burnt out, I mean, that's why I left investment banking. I did not want to run our company in the same way. So we had a good work-life balance. We tried to leave weekends to weekends. I would think twice before I'd email an employee at night or on the weekend. So I think it does start from the top. The example that the leadership sets definitely translates. As an employee, you also don't have to always absorb the energy of your superiors. I've heard of terrible bosses who will email you or call you in the middle of the night. You can set your boundaries, and if that doesn't work and you might get let go or whatever, that's okay. Find the next gig where it jives more with your speed. So I did learn that in banking as well. As a woman, I remember going to a women in banking dinner, and the leadership there, she said, before you ever think of quitting, try to push the boundaries a little bit. Ask for what you need. Get those things on the schedule, get that personal time, and see where it goes. Worst case is they fire you, and that's the same as you quitting. And that was really a valuable lesson for me. I started to take more personal time to myself, put more things on the calendar that were for me, and try to get the team to work around it. And I never was let go. If anything, I got promoted because suddenly I was able to show up to work in a more healthy way. So I think it's important to figure out where your norm is, and it's different for everyone, and it's different at different life stages. When I was younger, working around the clock like that, I had more energy for it. And as I got older, I just didn't want that anymore. And that's okay. There's times where you're ready to do that. With journalism now, might be a time where you want to kind of get as many articles out there and be part of the And there might be a time later in your career where you're going to put a little bit more brakes on it. And so embracing both of those times is important.
Definitely. Moving, pivoting a little bit, going back to entrepreneurship and getting into this realm. As a child, was entrepreneurship ever on your radar? If not, what was that childhood career you always thought you were going to be? Like a lot of people say you're going to be a doctor.
So I never, actor. I really wanted to do acting. I went through a lot. It changed every week, but I never thought of entrepreneurship. I did not grow up around a house that had any business. Like I said, my dad was an artist. And the message in our family was go get an education, get a job, and have financial security. So being an employee was always the goal, just being an employee, literally, of anything, earning a steady paycheck. So it really went against my comfort zone to think about entrepreneurship. When I was at Harvard, it kind of opened up a whole new world for me. And I've learned that if you commit to a lifestyle of an entrepreneur, you can find ways to earn an income. You can find ways to create that steady paycheck, but it comes from your appetite for the unpredictability of being an entrepreneur. You know, there's predictability in the sense that you'll always be up to something. You'll always be creating. You'll always be inventing. There'll be highs. There'll be lows. There'll be times where you're making money. There'll be times where you're not. All of that, you know. Versus the steady paycheck, but I think it's getting comfortable with the unpredictability that took me a long time.
Definitely. So knowing what you know now and having experienced what you've gone through, if you could give young Donna any key pieces of advice, what would they be?
Well, one is probably like chill the F out, because I was a little kid who was like, I gotta make it. I worked really hard. I was also just a kid who loved sports and all these things. But I think that, dream big. At the end of the day, so many people, so many things, society will make you dream small because you feel like, okay, this is the group that I live in. This is what everyone else is doing. So this is what I should be doing. Or nobody from my background has ever done this thing, so why should I even think about that? And sometimes you're just not around the kinds of people who dream big. So you don't even know that certain things are possible. So I think I would tell that little girl, just, stay open, stay curious, surround yourself with new and different people constantly that will push you to dream big, because you really never know where that dream might take you.
Definitely. Can you share one of your favorite lessons you learned while growing a Surprise Ride? It doesn't have to be a good lesson. It could be something that went bad.
Okay. Well, a lot of things.
Or vice versa.
A lot of things went bad. I think I learned that, when you're first thinking about launching, it's easy to stand on the sideline and keep perfecting your idea or your product. And when I'm coaching entrepreneurs, I hear this a lot. They keep iterating on the product. And I always say, it doesn't really matter. You got to get it out there. You got to start selling. And that's where you're going to get answers around what you should do to the product next, or even if anybody wants to buy it. So when we launched, we learned to code a little bit, really basic HTML, really basic stuff. And we put up a really ugly website. I mean, if you go back in Time Machine now and find it, it's terrible. It's not something we were really proud of, but it got the job done. You could get a sense of what we were selling. You could put your credit card in and you could cash out. And we got our first order when we were actually just testing the site to see if it worked, and we thought, we'd messed something up. But my advice, or one thing that I learned, is launch before you feel proud of launching. Launch when you're a little bit ashamed of your product. Start talking to people when you're a little bit unsure of it. And it's in that process that you will perfect the idea or even figure out if it's worth spending time on. So get off the sidelines, get in there, start working.
Okay, this is my last main question. Is there anything, if you could go back, is there anything you would have changed about your process of getting Surprise Ride to where it is today?
Definitely a lot of things that I've learned. One big one that I would change is I would raise more money in bigger chunks. We did a lot of smaller checks, like $500,000, couple million. I wish we had done really kind of, you're in the middle of it, and so you're just like, I need money to do this next thing. But I wish we had really kind of mapped it out, even maybe from the beginning a little bit, and raised, dreamt a little bit bigger early on and raised bigger checks. And that's another thing I see a lot, especially from women, just specifically. When they're fundraising, I always, I'll review a deck and they'll be raising like $1 million. $1 million is no man's land. That's not around. That's like that's like bigger than friends and family, smaller than seed, definitely smaller than Series A. So it's like no man's land. So I would really say it's important to talk to other founders and see what the current norms are around fundraising. What are the rounds? There's some pretty formulaic ways to approach fundraising. And make sure to dream bigger. So like, if you want to raise $1 million, why not 3? Why not 5? Let's talk about what a little bit more funds could get you. What would you really like to do? Not just like what you think you need to do to survive. What would you need to thrive? Who would you want to bring on? What might you put that money towards? So I think that's a big lesson that if I had to go back out, because it caused so many sleepless nights. Every time you're fundraising, it's really taxing.
Definitely. Well, we're just about out of time. Can we please give Donna a really big round of applause? That was amazing. I'm over here making a ruckus. Thank you so much, Donna.